the School of Fiction.
Kat, we've known each other quite a long time, and I want to welcome you. We met back during what I've been calling the indie author bubble, through
Yeah.
a mutual friend. I believe it was Andre Jute, who is
Yes.
an author from South Africa, now living in Ireland, and who had a sort of a social group of writers that he was promoting. And it's been such a pleasure to know you for so many years. This is our first time speaking. We're seeing each other's faces, though, so it's one of the joys of Zoom and one of the joys of the School of Fiction channel. So welcome. You sent me a picture of yourself with a horse called Blast, which I'm going to put up on the screen when I'm editing this. Can you tell us about your life as an equestrian and about Blast?
Well, I got my first pony when I was 4 years old, and I rode various horses through the years. I had two very nice quarter horses. One of them was descended from Man o' War, and another one from Native Dancer. And they, of course, aged out and passed away. And after 10 years without a horse, I started riding again. And one of my horses is Blast. And he's a beautiful little thing. He's very cheerful and he's very mischievous. And he's actually one of the main horses at the equestrian center where I ride now. Yeah, I started riding my sister's horse when I was 2, and I got my first pony at age 4.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
amazing. Okay, when did you start writing? Tell us about that.
Writing fiction.
Yes, of course.
6th grade for school. We were doing little short stories. I don't really remember them very much, but by the time I was in high school, I was pretty well hooked on the habit because I read so much. I read so many. I read a lot of science fiction.
Me too.
Andrea Norton, Anne McCaffrey, and then when Dick Francis came out and started writing, I think my whole family devoured his. I actually have his stuff in hardback. My mother, my sister, and I are huge fans.
Did you decide at a certain point that there were genres that really appealed to you more?
I read so widely for so long. Some of them were easier to devour, I guess. If you could, I could read a book a day, especially when I was in high school.
Yeah, same
I could
here.
go home
Yeah.
from school and read a book a day, and there's just so many different things that I like to read then.
Yeah, I had that habit. That one day I think I stayed home and I read 1,000-page book, and that was my
Yep.
peak. I was only able to pull that off one time. I think my parents might have occasionally found me in the middle of the night and said, "Put your book away."
Mm-hmm.
Definitely happened. Well, you have two books that we want to talk about today, and
Mm-hmm.
we have Let's Do Lunch, and we have
Mm-hmm.
Swallow the Moon. So tell us about the Let's Do Lunch, what sort of story it is, and how it came about, and
Let's Do Lunch is the one that I was working on when we met. And that one is about a family who they buy a restaurant in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And the restaurant actually exists. And it was a bank. And it's just this little tiny restaurant. And they use the vault in the back for storage. But the people, when I went into the restaurant, they were talking about growing their own food for the restaurant. And that idea kind of kicked in. And I had worked in the restaurant business for quite a while, and I had seen all kinds of things. So I threw together this story, and I got about halfway through it, and I got stuck. And this is actually where outlining comes in for me. We talked about that a little earlier. Is I needed to know where the story was going to go so I could finish it. And the writers group that I was in, we sat down and we actually learned how to outline. And I came home and I finished outlining it, and I actually finished the book for NaNoWriMo that year, which was probably 2009. And then the whole Amazon Kindle thing happened. And that was kind of the kickoff book.
Excellent. And food is a good topic for fiction. Restaurants are, and people, obviously everyone eats, but also people who cook are very interesting.
Yes. And the kind of protagonist, antagonist in the book is one of the cooks. This lady hires a cook, and what she doesn't understand is that he is selling methamphetamine in her restaurant under her nose with the help of the waitress. And this woman has got so much stuff going on that for a while she kind of leaves him and the waitress in charge of her restaurant. And then she realizes that something's terribly wrong.
And that's where the suspense kicks in.
Yes.
So it's going to be difficult to, once people have got their hooks into your business and they're criminals, to get rid of them. So I'm really excited to find out just how they get out of that situation, how she gets out of that situation. And we also have a book called Swallow the Moon, and we'd like to hear about that one.
Swallow the Moon was paranormal romance about a Suzuki Hayabusa that is painted by a man an artist named Van Gogh. And Van Gogh has made a deal with the devil. His customers always pay and his equipment never breaks. So the person that commissions the Hayabusa painting that he does, he makes it look like a cobra. They call him a butterscotch cobra. It's got this paint job on it, and it's textured like a snake, and it looks like a snake. And the woman who owns the motorcycle, her name is Cora Cobra. Cora dies before she can pay it off. So she owes him her soul. So she's haunting the motorcycle. Another man buys it. His name is Jake. He's a DEA agent. He buys the motorcycle, but he also owes his soul to the devil and Van Gogh, and he dies. And a third person, the hero of the story, he buys the motorcycle, and he wants to get the scratches painted out and the dents redone. He wants to get it restored. So he goes to Asheville, Ohio, and his motorcycle is run off the road by somebody who mistakes him for Jake the Snake. And he lands on the land of a young woman named June who has cast a spell to find her one true love. And so the blurb for the book is, she swallowed the moon to find true love, and a motorcycle from hell dropped him on her doorstep. Now there's hell to pay.
Jake the Snake Roberts. You got to send him a copy. I hope he's
I don't know.
all
Does
right.
he read them that?
Just, maybe you can send it to him courtesy of the DDP Yoga Center. Well, outlining was the topic we were going to talk about, and I know you told me as we were preparing for this that you've advanced through several stages of outlining. So starting with what you learned in your writing group, which was, I guess, index cards, and that you had I'm looking for the word here, the presentation board, and now you and I also use Scrivener.
Yes.
So let's follow the journey here for our new writers who are trying to figure that out. And there seem to be an awful lot of pantsers as compared to plotters.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our chance now to hear from the plotter point of view. I've had a number of pantsers on already, and
Mm-hmm.
a number of hybrids like me. But you're a plotter, so tell us about these outlining systems and why you advanced from one to the next.
Okay, well, when you want to write suspense or a thriller, you have to have a very close timeline. Things have to happen quickly. And I found the easiest way to do that was to figure out my plot points on the index cards. And I even got to the point where I was throwing them on a presentation board. And I had one side was the arc of the heroine, the other one was the arc of the hero, and the middle was the antagonist. It was all the things that happened in between. And I found that if I gave it a timeline, saying, okay, this story takes place, like Swallow the Moon takes place in 2 months. Let's Do Lunch takes place in 3 months. The third book, Collision Course, takes place in 3 months over the course of a summer. And then if you're looking at the calendar, you've got to say, okay, now I've got 8 weeks. What am I going to do? And you start putting the index cards against each one of the days. And you've got like, I can remember sitting there looking at Swallow the Moon going, I got a whole week here. What am I going to do? And deciding, okay, well, this is going to happen. And you get the plot points and you get the events and you figure out how you're going to make things advance. And you can actually write very, very quickly. Especially if you're, get a like NaNoWriMo. Swallow the Moon was a NaNoWriMo book. And if you just get it compressed, in the end, the story is also compressed. And you can get that sagging middle syndrome that so many stories have. You can get rid of that. And you can make things just tick along. And it's really fun from that point on how to do it. And then, of course, there's Scrivener. And for people who don't know what Scrivener is, it's a writing software where you have different views of it. And if you want index cards and a corkboard, it'll give you that. If you want a bullet point outline, it'll give you that too. It's a wonderful tool for doing things like that.
And it has I've been using Scrivener for quite some time, and it has features that make it especially good for people doing nonfiction. It has color coding and for research.
Yes.
I don't use those features. What I like about it is that I can embed notes in separate sections. I can create headings and subheadings much more easily. I've always found stuff like Word very clunky, but in Scrivener it's much easier to, because it reads. It looks kind of like Windows with folders and subfolders on the side. And
that is so cool.
Yeah. Switching to corkboard is another thing. I'm not as much that way as you are, but it does help me sometimes to find what I'm looking for when I can't tell what's going on. So I tend to recommend it. Scrivener is still very inexpensive. And a lot of writers swear by a lot of softwares, but this one just has this kind of elegance to arranging and moving your stuff around. It does have some other features like it's supposed to be able to format books for you. Although I always paid book formatters, I was never confident in that. But I think I pretty much recommend
you just have to be careful on how you do it. I use it for that. I make all my ebooks with that. I get everything. I run everything through Word, and then when I'm done with Word and I can see it, because it doesn't print out as well as it should. But once I've got everything done, I run it right through. There's a function on it called
compile
compile as is.
Yeah.
So if you get everything done there, you can just send it through. And I think Swallow the Moon wasn't done that way, but all the rest of my books have been done that way. Like Collision Course was done like that.
So tell us some more about Collision Course.
Collision Course is about it started out with a house here in Radcliffe, Kentucky. It's a beautiful blue Victorian. And at one point it was a tea house. And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating. So my main character is a widow. And one day she has a fender bender with a motorcyclist. And he is the man who is investigating her husband when he died. So the blurb for that one is a fender bender brings them together with a collision course with the only thing they have in common, which is the death of her husband. And that one was also a NaNoWriMo book. And I had that one, I actually used a presentation board and the cards. Unfortunately, I destroyed it. I thought I had it here at the house, and I don't. But I took all my plot points and I had them all laid out. What she did, what he did, and then what the actual hidden forces that killed her husband, what they were doing. And I liked the way it moved because it was, she had a plot, he had a plot, and then there was all the things that her husband has done and everything that was going in there together.
So yeah, so you were interweaving 3 different character arcs, and definitely this is work for plotters. And I've had a habit of trying to have a character arc for as many characters as possible, on the grounds that I'm hoping my readers like them and they want to see them doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's true. I had to very much. So with some of the books that I haven't brought out yet, including one I'm working on now, starting to accumulate so much stuff because of being a hybrid, that instead of going tightly along, I keep saying, "Oh, let me get that. Where do I put that in? Where do I put that in?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm still resisting corkboarding for some reason.
Yeah.
Just like writing in my notebooks. Fit this in somewhere. Fit this in somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
with Scrivener, it's easy enough to just kind of make drop put a document, write this scene, and just put it in there, and then I can move it around while I figure out where it goes.
That's my favorite part, because that way you can brainstorm all the different things that you want to do with it and then move it where it belongs.
Having a document inside a subfolder does give it a kind of weight where he doesn't get lost if you just typed a line in the middle of some other document.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's very handy like that, and I really enjoy using it.
Mm-hmm. So you don't get blocked, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Mm-hmm. I do, but not when I'm sitting down to write. I had problems finishing Collision Course. And when I finally got it done, and then I started working on other things, of course, COVID came along and ruined everything for everybody. But lately, what I've been working on is actually something totally different. I'm a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So I've been working on a lot of that. And I wrote a book about that, which is nonfiction, that I'm trying to get some photographs for. And I have a game world that I've been working with for the last few months that's actually gone very well. And I do that in Scrivener too.
Right. You mentioned COVID, and I'm going to go a little bit off of our plans here and talk about this, because as you said, COVID ruined everything for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It ruined writing for me
Mm-hmm.
for a period of time. I was writing under a pseudonym. And as COVID hit, I had just started a series. I
Mm-hmm.
had finished the first book out of a series of 4 that was planned, and they were romances. And I was like, how can you write romance now? How can anyone read it? How can anyone believe it when COVID is having this effect? And it just drained it out of me. And I was not able to recover the ability to write whatsoever for something like 4 years. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't believe it. I had never been writer's blocked before. I was just feeling like nothing I write's going to matter. There are no readers out there. I can't sell anything. No matter what I write, nobody wants to read it when it's coming from me. I'm not connected to the zeitgeist. I was just, and I think COVID had a lot to do with it. It just made me feel like there was no point in writing, or at least no point for me to do it. The world had changed too much.
I agree.
So, what was that time like for you as a writer?
Um, I did too much doom scrolling, and I was totally blocked on everything. And I ended up listening to a D&D cast thing called Critical Role. And
Yeah,
that
I've
actually
seen them.
got,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, that actually got my juices flowing again. But I think what ruined it all for me, as far as the writing went, is when 50 Shades of Grey came out, and the whole romance genre changed, and it became much, much darker than I had ever seen it, and I totally lost interest in it. That's when I started writing my books, The Horsewomen of the Zombie Apocalypse. And I got all 3 of those books out, and I was working on 2 more. And my parents passed away, and I got done in a bunch of that stuff. So by the time COVID hit, I wasn't writing, and I hadn't written anything in a long time. But what I started doing during COVID that I hadn't done before was advertising. And I'm actually getting to the point where I'm getting some traction on that, but that really took years.
That's something that we should talk about. I think we'll set that for our next interview, because I want to start moving toward talking about marketing and advertising and things like that. And so I'm going to set that up for a separate line of interviews, I think, and learn from you about it, because everything that I learned about advertising when I was in the bubble, it stopped working.
Yes, it
And
did.
everything is different now. And
Mm-hmm.
since you're exploring it, then I want to learn from you. And I'm going to also ask other people who are working in that with that, because the
Mm-hmm.
marketing aspect is something that most people do not know how to do, including me. Anything that we can get out there to help people figure it out and navigate it would be wonderful.
There's an Irish gentleman, David Garon, um, who has a series of videos that were actually very good. And I learned from him to use something called BookBub, and they're like instant ads.
What is it
I'm
again,
actually,
sorry?
hmm?
What is it again?
BookBub,
BookBub.
B-U-B.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
BookBub requires that you have a certain number of reviews, I think, before they'll consider you.
Actually, there's a workaround.
Uh-huh.
When they send out their main newsletter, at the very end, there's a little blurb at the very bottom, little teeny tiny thing. Gives you like 60 characters. And you can actually use that to get a few sales and maybe get some momentum. Something else that I found out is I actually sell more books on Barnes and Noble than I do on Amazon.
I never sold a single book on Barnes and Noble.
I didn't
I
either
dropped them.
until I
I gave
started
them up
using.
because to get into
Mm-hmm.
KDP because Barnes and Noble simply produced zero sales for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it would be like now. It's been a long time, but
Yeah, I didn't use them for a long time either, but just recently, I mean, I sold 80 copies of Collision Course last month. That is more than I have sold in a year. It was an amazing surge in book sales for me. And I'm trying to figure out how to keep it going.
no.
And I don't know. So far this month, it's still selling, but not like it did. You know how you get those little bumps? We'll see what happens with that.
Some of the mysteries of algorithms, I think. No,
Oh,
mysteries to
yeah.
me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm going to thank Kat Jordan very much. Let's pick up her books. Let's Do Lunch and Swallow the Moon and Collision
Mhm.
Course. Those are some of the most interesting plot lines I've heard about in a long time. And we are going to have you back, Kat, to talk about marketing and advertising and more about Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you
All
so much for
right.
coming.